In this video, I'm going to teach you how to use the box method to factor a trinomial into two binomials. Now, it's kind of important for you to still understand the AC method where you're multiplying the A value times the C value because we're going to start the box method that way. Since factoring is basically the opposite of multiplication, let's remind you how to multiply using the box method. So if you remember, if I have two binomials, I'm going to split this into a 2 by 2. Where I put one of the binomials on top, one on the side. It does not matter which is which. And then kind of like a multiplication table, I'm just multiplying the two. So in this case, this is an x times x, which is an x squared. This is a 4x. Down below here, that would be a negative 3x. And then here would be a negative 12. And then if you remember correctly, usually these two terms right here are your common terms that you have to put together. And the final answer is x squared plus x minus 12. All right, now for factoring, we're going to start with the things that are inside the box and then move to the two binomials on the outside of the box. So kind of moving backwards. In this video, when I tell you to multiply the A times the C, I wanted to make sure that you understand what those are. The A is just the coefficient in front of the A, x squared or whatever variable you have squared. The C is the constant. And then the B value, and that's actually important also, the B value is the one that's in the middle that's multiplying times the x that would basically have a exponent of a 1, though we don't show that. Here's how we factor using the box method. And remember, the whole goal is we want to get back to the two binomials that when they multiplied, they got to x squared plus 10x plus 24. So make a box. And in the very top left-hand corner, you're going to put your first term. So there's your x squared. And in the opposite bottom corner, you're going to put the last term. And then you're going to do just like you would in the AC method. You're going to multiply the A times the C. So 1 times 24. And this is 24. Now, the number in front of x is not always 1, but for the first 4 problems, it's going to be. And then you're going to find the factors of 24. 124. 2, 12, 3, 8, 4, 6. That's it. And we're looking for factors that will add up to become a positive 10x. And we know all these have to be positive because, well, they could have all been negative because two negatives would equal 24. But since we're looking for a positive 10x, it's nice that they're positive. Right here, 4 plus 6. And so what I'm going to do, and I don't care which box I put it in, I'm going to put one of the boxes, I'm going to put a 4 with an x, and the other box I'm going to put the 6 with an x. And so those two right there, the 4x and the 6x, they have to add up to your middle term there, the 10x. All right, now I'm going to do factoring. And so I'm going to look right here at this, and I'm just going to ask myself, what can I factor out? What's the greatest common factor of x squared and 6x? And I always start right at that box. I don't know. It's good to at least have a good starting point every time. So I'm just saying x. Well, then what comes out? X times what is x squared? X. And so that goes there. What times x equals 6x? 6. What type of 6? Positive 6. Not too bad. Now look below here. What is the greatest common factor of 4x and 24? A 4. Positive 4, right? And now just test this. Is positive 4, and I'm going to go ahead and use, let's see if I can use a little highlighter here. Does positive 4 and x give me a 4x? Yeah. Let's use a different color. Does positive 4 and positive 6 give me a 24? Sure. So it worked out. We're good. Finally, what you see here and here are your two binomials. It's going to be x plus 6 and x plus 4. If you don't believe me, multiply them and see if it doesn't get you back up to x squared plus 10x plus 24. Here we go again, and the only difference here is that the middle term is going to be negative. So we're still going to multiply my A times my C. So 1 times 45 is 45. And go ahead and write the factors down. So let's see, that's 3, 15, 5, and 9. I believe that is it. But when they're adding up, they have to equal a negative 18, which means that I've got to get some negative numbers. And what gives you a positive 25 when you multiply? I'm sorry, positive 45 when you multiply? Well, either two positive numbers or two negative numbers. So since I'm looking for a negative 18, these all have to be negative, which is fine because a negative plus a negative is just a negative. You add it like normal. So which two of those, when you add them together, are going to give you a negative 18? Yeah, that one right there. Okay, so here we go. Here's my box. Not a beautiful box, but here's my box. I'm going to put my first term here. I'm going to put my last term here. And then I'm going to take that negative 3 and the negative 15. It doesn't matter where I put them. What does matter is that they have x's beside them. And that negative 3 and negative 15, if I were to add them together, should be the negative 18. All right, let's look right here at this first row. What is my greatest common factor of x squared and negative 15x? An x. And then what would I have multiplied times x to get that x squared? Well, another x. And what would I have multiplied the x to get a negative 15x? Negative 15. Cool. Last but not least, let's look at this last row. What is the greatest common factor of negative 3 and 45? Well, this is important. If your first one there is negative, it's going to be a negative. I'm just telling you straight up. All right? So then, what else? What's the big number? Oh, 3. So let's see if this works. Does negative 3 times x give me negative 3x? Yep. Does negative 3 times negative 15 give me a positive 45? Yeah. All right, good. So the top binomial, the side binomial, and I am done. That's it. All right, let's try another. Do you want to try this on your own? Well, pause the video and try it on your own and then come back. All right, here we go. A is 1. 1 times negative 24 is negative 24. Now, that's a different one because the other two have been positive. So I'm going to go ahead and do these like normal without thinking about my negatives for a moment. But for a pair of numbers to multiply to be negative, one of them has to be negative and one of them has to be positive. So I'm going to go ahead and make these negative, and then I'm going to just rewrite everything. And I'm going to make these negative. That way I have all the different pairs of numbers that would multiply to be negative 24. Now what I'm going to do is try to find two numbers that when we add them together is going to give me a positive 5. Remember, when you have a negative and a positive number, you're actually, when you're adding, you're finding the difference between them. So it's kind of like subtracting. It is going to be a positive 5, which means my bigger number of the two must be positive. So this group doesn't work because all the big numbers are negative. So do you see it here? I do, right here. All right, a negative 3 and a positive 8. If I add them together, that should give me a positive 5. Let's go ahead and make our box. And put the first term in the first box and put the last term in the last box. And then I'm going to take that negative 3 and put it here, but I always have to remember to put an x with it, and the 8 and an x. All right, I'm going to start right here like normal. What number can I factor out of x squared and 8x? An x. And then what multiply times x to get x squared? An x. What multiply times x to get an 8x? Positive 8. It's so important to put the sign when you're doing it on the outside of the box there, like the positive. All right, down here, remember what I said? If the first number is negative, we're going to be pulling out a negative. And now just look at 3 and 24. What can be pulled out of a 3 and 24? A 3. And then just check the bottom. Does negative 3 times that x give me negative 3x? Yep. Does the negative 3 times a positive 8 give me a negative 24? Yep. All right. And it doesn't matter which way you write these. I could have written the x minus 3 first if I'd wanted to. But there you go. This is going to be the last of the easy kind before we go on to the harder ones. And the reason I call this easy is just because this guy's a 1. So multiplying is easy. That's the only thing. 1 times negative 64 is negative 64. And so I have 1 and 64, a 2 and 32, a 4 and 21, 8 and 8. There you go. However, again, because negative 64 is negative, one of them has to be negative, one has to be positive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right here. And my number here is going to be negative, which means my bigger number has to be negative. So I'm just, instead of writing the numbers twice, I'm just going to go ahead and put those as negatives. All right, can you see it? What pair, when we put it together, is going to give you negative 30? That one right there, yep. 2 plus negative 32 is going to give me negative 30. All right, here's my box. And the first term goes in the first box, and the last term goes in the last box. And then I'm going to have a 2. Don't forget to put the x. I'm going to have that negative 32. Don't forget the x. All right, here is another one of my suggestions to you, a little advice. If you're going to have one positive, one negative, I like to put my positive one in this box. That way, when I'm pulling out the greatest common factor, I don't have to pull out some sort of negative number. Oh, that is not the eraser. Here we go. All right, so what is the greatest common factor of x squared and negative 32x? X. So what times x squared? What times... Yeah, anyway, there's the x. X times x is x squared. What goes at the top of this one? Negative 32. All righty. Then what is the greatest common factor of the bottom row? A 2. What type of 2? Positive 2. And sure enough, let's check it out. Do the multiplication. Does 2 times x give me 2x? Yep. Does 2 times negative 32 give me negative 64? Yep, I'm there. So I have an x plus 2 as one of my binomials, and x minus 32 as the other binomial. All right, we're stepping it up a notch because we're going to put a number bigger than 1 in front of the x squared, but it's done exactly the same way. All right, here we go. We're going to multiply my 5 times my 8 times my c, and that's a 40. And then under there, I'm going to do my factors, 20, 4, 10, and 5, 8. Same thing as before, I'm finding the factors of 40 that are going to add up to be a positive 14. And so that is going to be a 4 and a 10. I'm going to put my first term here, my last term here. And again, it does not matter where I put the 4 and the 10, but what it does matter is that, number 1, they have x's, and number 2, they better, when I add them together, equal that middle term of 14x. All right, let's look at that first row of 5x squared and 10x. I can factor out a 5. I can also factor out an x. And then what times 5x equals 5x squared? An x. What times 5x equals 10x? A positive 2. All right, what can I pull out of the bottom row? It looks like I can pull out a positive 4, right? Test the multiplication. Does 4 times x equal 4x? Yep. Does 4 times 2 equal 8? Yep. You're there. X plus 2 and 5x plus 4 is your answer. Why don't you pause the video before each of these last 3 ones? Try them on your own and see how well you do. All right, let me go ahead and make my box. And this time I'm doing 7 times the 12. I get an 84. So 184, 242. 3 does go in there. How many times? 28. 4 goes in there 21 times. 6 goes in there 14 times. 7 goes in there 12 times. And I believe I am done. All right. Oh, this 20 is negative, which means I've got to think of all these as being negative, which is okay because I'm still adding them like normal. I'm just going to keep the negative sign. All right, which 2, when I add them together, give me a negative 20? If you say negative 6 and negative 14, you are correct. So I'm going to put my first term, my last term. Let's see, negative 6x and then a negative 14x. All right. So looking at the first row, what can I pull out? Well, it looks like I can pull out a 7 out of the 7, 14, and an x. What times 7x equals 7x squared? An x. What times 7x equals negative 14x? So just think 7 times what is negative 14? Negative 2. All right, looking at the bottom row, since that first number starts with a negative, it is going to be a negative. And what's the greatest common factor of 6 and 12? 6. Test it out. Let's go to that bottom corner. Does negative 6 times negative 2 give me a positive 12? Yes. All right, there we go. Did you try it on your own? And if so, how close did you get to being right? All right, pause the video if you want to try it on your own. Here we go. 3 times negative 16 is going to give me a negative 48. Oh, another negative number. All right, well, let's just throw all the positive factors down first. 148, 224. Oh, the 8 does not look like an 8. There we go. 3 and 16. 4 and 12. 6 and 8, and I believe I'm done. But one of them has to be negative, one of them has to be positive. So before I rewrite the entire list, I'm going to go look and say, hey, that's positive. And that means my bigger number has to be positive. So that means my smaller number has to be negative. All right, that's cool. So what two, when I put them together, is going to give you a 22? Now remember, you're actually finding the difference here. Well, if you said negative 2 and 24, you are correct. So I'm going to put my first term, my last term. And remember, I'm going to put my positive term in this box. It just makes things easier. And then my negative term right here. Okay. What can I pull out of a 3x squared and a negative 2x? Just an x. Which means I have a 3x left over, and it looks like a negative 2 on this side. And then in the bottom row, what can I factor out of 24 and 16? An 8. Positive 8. All right, let's test this out. 8 times 3x, is that 24x? Yes. In the bottom corner, 8 times negative 2, does that give me negative 16? Yes. All righty. There we go. All right, one more. Stop this one, do it on your own, and then come back. All right. So I'm doing positive 2 times negative 3. So 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. And I'm going to have a 1 times 6 and a 2 times 3, and that's it. And then they're going to add up to be a negative 5. And because it's a negative 6, one of those has to be negative. Since my middle term is going to be negative, then my bigger number has to be negative. There you go. I mean, you could have written the other two in 2 pairs and then just looked at it, and that was fine. Which pair adds up to negative 5? Well, that would be the 1 plus negative 6 is going to give you a negative 5. So here we go. The first term goes here. The last term goes here. I'm going to put my negative term upstairs. And my other term here, I am going to call it a 1x. The first row, I can pull out, it looks like a 2 and an x. So 2x what times what equals 2x squared, an x. 2x times what equals negative 6x? Well, just look at the 2. 2 times what is negative 6? Negative 3. All right. Now, the last row. I can't pull a variable out, and the biggest number I can pull out is a 1, so I'm going to do it. Plus 1. All right, let's test it. 1 times x is 1x. Yep, 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. Great. So I have negative 3. There we go. X minus 3 and a 2x plus 1. And those are my binomials. And we are done. So you should be able to now go and do factor most trinomials. So go have some fun.